Guys, Mark here, and this is the Galaxy Z Fold 2 that I've been using for about 2 weeks. When I bought and reviewed the first Galaxy Fold, I said that it made me feel very excited for the future of foldable phones. And the Z Fold 2 amplifies that excitement. It is by far the craziest, most innovative phone I have ever tested, and I love it. It's got a few pretty serious shortcomings that we'll talk about in just a bit, but overall, it's a beast of a phone. The Z Fold 2, or Fold 2 as I'm going to be calling it for the rest of this video, is a very, very good looking phone, especially in this mystic bronze color. The back has a matte finish for making sure fingerprints never see the light of day, and the new Note 20 series style camera bump looks very sleek, although it does kind of stick out on the back a little bit. One problem I had with the original Fold was just how much the cover display made the phone seem and feel like a toy. On the Fold 2, that problem has been eradicated with the cover display being much bigger and stretched out to the outer sides of the phone. With this new cover display and that glossy, beautiful hinge on the side, I think this is one of the best looking phones out there, and it only gets better on the inside. This phone is kind of a head turner even when it's folded up. It's a very unique looking phone. But when you unfold this thing, that's when you're gonna blow minds. The inner screen on this Fold 2 is a massive 7.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display that runs at a high refresh rate of 120 Hertz. That by itself would have been a stunning display even if it was a normal flat one, but this one also folds in half. Say what you want about Samsung phones, but you can't deny the fact that they pulled all the stops with this one. The bezels are shrunk from the first Fold, and they've removed the horrible, absolutely terrible corner notch and replaced it with a punch-out camera hole. Now, some people get a little bit irritated that Samsung didn't put the camera hole in the middle or in one of the corners of the inner display, but they actually just couldn't. Think about it. They can't put it in the right corner because that's where the massive camera module on the back is. They can't put it on the left corner because that's where the 6.2-inch cover display is, and they can't put it in the middle because that's where the hinge is, so they really didn't have a choice. It's really not a big deal anyway. It's pretty small and unobtrusive, and you're just gonna quickly forget it's there. The Z Fold 2 packs the best of the best when it comes to internals. Qualcomm 5G-enabled Snapdragon 865 Plus, 12 gigs of RAM, and on my model, 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. As you would expect, this phone is a multitasking monster, and it has absolutely no problem keeping up with anything you throw at it, so long as the software will allow it to, of course. And that's where I want to transition and talk a little bit about how it feels to use this crazy phone tablet thing. The first thing you notice when you pick it up is just how freaking heavy it is. The weight does make it feel more premium and expensive, but it's also just kind of a pain to use, especially if you're used to lighter phones. Without a case on it, this phone weighs 282 grams, which is over half a pound. For me personally, this is one of the least comfortable phones I've used so far. The weight combined with the awkwardly narrow 6.2-inch cover display doesn't lend itself to the greatest experience. But this phone really isn't meant for that. Sure, you could use the cover display for quickly checking emails, taking a phone call, or responding to a text, but the Fold 2 wants you to open it up and take advantage of that huge inner display as much as possible. Once it goes from that awkward brick shape into a much more familiar square tablet form factor, the phone, now tablet, becomes much more comfortable to use. When it's unfolded, it's a lot like the iPad mini, except without the huge bezels on the top and the bottom. Watching Netflix or YouTube videos is an absolute joy on this thing with the crazy amount of screen real estate you get. And the stereo speakers can get mind-blowingly loud. Just be careful about how you hold the phone because the speakers are pretty easy to block. The inner display does have a few problems though. The first one is fairly obvious, and it's less of what I would call a problem and more of a minor annoyance, and that's the crease caused by the folding display. You can see it when you're viewing the display off axis or if it catches the light in a weird way, but most of the time it's actually fairly invisible. The thing that could be a problem with this inner display is the durability issues that a folding screen in 2020 presents. Samsung upgraded the inner display with the ultra-thin glass layer that came with the Z Flip, but I still don't have much confidence in this thing. They've also included a screen protector that comes pre-installed, and Samsung actually does not recommend that you remove this by yourself. If that doesn't tell you that they aren't super confident in the durability, I don't know what will. Beyond that, because of all the crazy folding display tech and all the moving parts with the hinge, Samsung was not able to make this phone have any sort of water resistance, and if you drop it in water, you might as well just call it dead. But the bad ends there. Pretty much every other thing about this phone, other than the price, is incredible. The power button / fingerprint reader combo is solid and great to have during the current pandemic. The hinge is absolutely amazing, and it comes with a whole bunch of new flex mode features. And the cameras, well, not quite up to the Note 20 Ultra tier quality, are pretty darn good. Let's talk about flex mode and the cameras all in one go. So, like I mentioned in my previous video about the new features of the Z-Fold2, flex mode allows you to do stuff like split screen a video and the comments section between two halves of the phone, turn the Fold 2 into a mini tripod for taking pictures, and use the rear camera module as selfie cameras to take some of the best selfie photos and videos ever. All of that is thanks to the new hinge that will stay solid at any angle, and the whole thing feels much more solid than the Fold 1. Photography on this thing is great. There's loads of dynamic range and sharpness, and I love the versatility of having a huge 7.6-inch display as my viewfinder. The only thing I didn't really like is that they downgraded the cameras on this thing when comparing it to something like the Note 20 Ultra. And for the price of this phone, I kind of expected it to have only the best of the best, which isn't the case. The Z Fold 2 has three 12-megapixel cameras on the rear, a wide, ultra-wide, and 2x telephoto. That's compared to the 108-megapixel wide, 12-megapixel ultra-wide, and 12-megapixel 5x periscope lens on the Ultra. While photos tend to be relatively similar, the video on the Note 20 Ultra is a lot better. That's not to say that it's bad on the Fold 2, especially now that you can take selfie video with the rear cameras, but it's just not up to the Note 20 Ultra quality. I've got a full review on the cameras of the Note 20 Ultra if you're interested, and you can watch that by clicking on the link up here. Battery life on this phone is actually really good. It's got a 4500 milliamp hour battery inside, and while that is a pretty decent sized battery, I didn't think it would be enough to power the 7.6-inch 120Hz display on the inside. Turns out, thankfully, I was wrong. I can easily get a full day out of this phone and part of another one, even if I'm using the inner display pretty heavily at 120 Hz. You can lock the display at 60 Hz if you want more battery life, but obviously I prefer to have it on. It also supports what they call super fast charging at 25 watt speeds, fast wireless charging at 15 watts, and slow-ish reverse wireless charging at 4.5 watts if you want to charge something like the Galaxy Buds Live on the back of your phone. So look, this is a very premium and expensive phone with all the bells and whistles you'd expect, like incredible performance and great battery life, an excellent set of cameras, and an unbelievably amazing pair of displays. But this phone still costs $2,000 US. It's not IP rated, the inner display is still fragile, and it's still pretty awkward to use when it's folded up like this. So what Samsung has created here is a phone for those of us that want the absolute best, the bleeding edge of technology, and those of us who don't mind paying for it. If you're that kind of person, this phone is for you. It was built for you. But for everybody else, I recommend just waiting just a couple more years for Samsung to perfect the folding display tech and just make it a little bit cheaper before you drop your